Decades ago, the Kapishnitzter Rebbe went a number of weeks before Pesach to be involved in the baking of matzah. Kedarko B'Kodesh, the Heilige Kapishnitzter Rebbe took with him a number of Hasidim and people to go along for the baking of the matzah. When they finished the baking of the matzah, the Kapishnitzter Rebbe had envelopes filled with money, with cash. He wanted to thank those that helped and that were there and facilitated the baking of the matzah. So he took out an envelope and gave each one some of the money, some of the envelopes, as a way of hakaras hatov. That's our trademark, to say thank you. And he handed it to the different people. A number of weeks later, it was Erev Pesach. Some have the minhag that they bake matzah specifically, deliberately, on Erev Pesach because it's an unusual zchus and a merit. And the Kapishnitzter Rebbe went back to the same matzah baking, to the same people, but now it was Erev Pesach, and of course it's the busiest day of the Jewish year, and he wanted to bake matzah again. And when he finished the baking of the matzah, once again with envelopes filled with cash, he went ahead and he started handing them to the people to say thank you and hakaras hatov once again. One of the Yidden who was about to take the envelope, he was one that helped a few weeks prior. So he hesitated to take the envelope and he pushed it back to Kapishnitzter Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, you already gave me. You were already Yaitse. And the Kapishnitzter Rebbe took the envelope and put it back in the man's hands and said, Reb Yid, I didn't come to this world just to be Yaitse. I didn't come to this world just to fulfill my basic obligation. If a person thinks about the Shabbos that we spent together for Project Inspire the last 25 hours, Ashreichem to the 1,100 of us, because we're living with the words of the Kapishnitzter Rebbe, no one in this room came to this world just to be Yaitse. We learn from looking at Reb Chaim Samson, and from Reb Yossi Friedman, and from Reb Mordechai Trapp, and from Reb Yaakov Ginniger, and the rest of the staff. None of them came to this world just to be Yaitse. Because if you came just to fulfill your obligation, and just to get by with the bare minimum of helping a fellow Jew, we wouldn't be here this Shabbos, and there wouldn't be a Project Inspire. There wouldn't be a global fulfillment of Reb Noach Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh L'Vracha's vision. But only because people like Reb Chaim and Reb Yossi and Reb Mordechai and Reb Yaakov and the entire staff taught us we're not here just to be Yaitse. God allowed you to survive the pandemic. God has allowed us brachos and gesund and shalom bayis and parnasa. It's not just to be Yaitse, but it's to help Project Inspire and be there for all of Klal Yisrael. Project Inspire and the names that I have mentioned have taught us that our sojourn in this world is not just to be Yaitse and to get by, but every day to ask ourselves, what are we doing to help a fellow Yid? Perhaps one of the most powerful pshatim I've heard in my life, from the Lubliner Rosh Hashiva, the founder of the Daf Hayomi, Reb Meir Shapiro. We know in the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Avram Avinu, go outside and count the stars. And after attempting to count the stars, Hashem says to Avram Avinu, Ko Yezarecha, so shall your children be. Literally it means, we the Jews will be like stars. Just like stars are numerous and are scintillating and brilliant and illuminate, so does every Jew do the same. But Reb Meir Shapiro says, no, listen to a game-changing word. That's not what it means, Ko Yezarecha. It also means, Hashem told Avram, go out and count the stars. Why did he attempt to do it? You can't count stars. It's impossible. Nobody can count stars. Yet he tried. He made the attempt. As insurmountable and as impossible as it was, he made the effort. When Hashem saw that he tried the impossible, he said to Avram, Koi Yezarecha. That's the Jewish trait. That is entrenched and inseared in our DNA. Koi. that midah, that quality and trait, to attempt the impossible and try the insurmountable, that is who we are. It's in our DNA. It's in the very fabric of who our very being. That, says Reb Meir Shapiro, is what we have to remember as Klal Yisrael, the nation. We attempt the impossible. You heard that Rav Shach told Reb Noach. Then one person could bring back 6 million, but it seems impossible. It seems insurmountable. You heard earlier about $1 and another dollar and another. Reb Meir Shapiro is telling us, Kai, that trait of going out, believing. We just saw the most extraordinary video about how a doctor took to heart the belief and helped save thousands upon thousands. We can make the attempt. Ko yihye zarecha. It is who we are. It seems so hard, so funereal, so insurmountable, so difficult. But that is who we are. That's what Project Inspire is. They attempt, they persevere, and they're successful. You must believe. Don't let nobody tell you no. A friend of mine shared with me that he went to Los Angeles. He's from New York. A very well-known person went from New York to LA to City of Hope Hospital because he needed a bone marrow transplant. And he had to remain near City of Hope Hospital in LA for 100 days in case they needed him to come back in. So my friend from New York went with another cross-country. They flew to visit and do Bikur Chaylim, see how he was. In the middle of their visit, the one who underwent the bone marrow transplant turned to the two and said, you know, there's a Yid from Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem, who's having a bone marrow transplant. Let's go to City of Hope Hospital and give him words of encouragement. Make him feel good and be positive. The three got into the car. They drove there. Unfortunately, much to their chagrin, they were too late. The procedure already took place half an hour earlier. So the three of them were dejected. They just wanted to give chizuk, words of encouragement, and they turned to leave. Then they hear somebody calling, Orthodox Jews, well, 1 second. They turn around and they see the head nurse, it's a male nurse. He's been there for decades, and he says, hey, you three, I see you're religious Jews. Can you do me a favor? I've been the head nurse here for about 40 years. This procedure's happened thousands of times. I always let the patient know beforehand what they can anticipate. They won't have any strength for about 48 to 72 hours. They'll literally lie there. They'll think they're dead, listless, lifeless, no strength. But don't worry, they'll be okay. I couldn't tell it to the man because he only speaks Hebrew. I only speak English. So because of the language barrier, I couldn't convey that message. His wife is there. Do you three mind, in your language, Hebrew, telling the wife not to worry when she sees he looks dead, listless and lifeless? It's okay, don't worry. The three of them are staring past the nurse through a glass wall, and they're white like a ghost. He turns to see what they're looking at. And there was the Jew from Jerusalem who half an hour prior had the procedure. He got out of his bed, albeit slowly. He grabbed onto the IV pole. He walked methodically to his cabinet where his clothing was. He put on his Bieber hat, what he wore in Jerusalem. He walked over to the sink. He came back. He washed Natilas Yadayim. He washed his hands 3 times and then got back into bed. And the male nurse started to shriek. It's not possible! It's not possible! It's just not possible! He was going to pass out. My friend turned to the male nurse and said, Mister, there are 2 possible explanations for what just happened. Number 1, it's a medical miracle we witnessed, a 1 in 10 million. Or possibility number 2. This was the first time, because of a language barrier, you couldn't convey to the patient what they wouldn't be able to do. Maybe because you didn't tell the patient what they couldn't do, they were able to do it. Because if you don't tell somebody what you can't do, and it's impossible, and it's insurmountable, Ko yihye zarecha, they'll be able to do it. He broke down crying. He never meant to be malicious. He meant to tell them that they'd be okay, but he admitted, I'll never do it again. Because of the language barrier was the first time that he couldn't convey. But if you always tell the patient, you won't, you can't, you won't, you can't, it's impossible, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you don't tell somebody their limitations, if you don't tell them what they can't and won't be able to do, they can do it. They'll surprise you. Like Project Inspire attempts to change the face of tens of thousands. It seems impossible. It seems insurmountable. Don't let anybody tell us, the 1,100 strong or perhaps more tonight who attended this convention, that we can't and we won't and it's impossible and insurmountable. Because if nobody tells us that message, then maybe, just maybe, we'll leave here and we will be able to. The pasuk tells us in Hazinu, Kidar tapuches hema, banim loy emun bam. Literally, it means that it's a generation of reversals, children who didn't follow in my ways. Listen to an extraordinary explanation. The word tapuches is from the word mapecha. Mapecha means in English a revolution. You know what Hashem is telling us tonight? Dar tapuches hema. You could make a revolution. You could change the face of Klal Yisrael, like Rav Shach said. So what gets in the way? What is the single biggest impediment? Banim loy emun bam. Emun is from the word emunah, because you don't believe in yourselves. What stops us from soaring high and changing the face of Klal Yisrael and making that mapecha, making that positive revolution where we change the face of Klal Yisrael and bring everyone closer to the Ribbon Shalom, our Father in heaven. Banim loy emun bam. We don't believe in ourselves. If we would learn to believe in ourselves, if we would learn to believe, don't anybody tell me I can't and I won't, but I can. If we would learn to believe, Ko Yezerecha, it's in the fabric of our DNA, entrenched and enseared, yes, we can. We will learn from the ways of Project Inspire. We will learn what it means, one Jew after another, after another, after another, to bring them closer to Hashem. We must believe in ourselves and in others. And in conclusion, a number of years ago, there was a boy in yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael who had a question on the Gemara. He didn't have an answer. He went down to the library and he looked it up in a sefer, but he didn't like the answer that was given in the sefer. It didn't please him. So he went to his Rabbi and said, Rabbi, what should I do? And the Rabbi said, well, look who wrote the sefer, the Mechaber, on the front page, his address, and go visit him and tell him you didn't like his answer. The boy got on a bus. The name of the Mechaber, the author of the sefer, was Yosef. He gets off at the address indicated on the front page, and he goes very jolly to tell Yosef, the author of the sefer, I didn't like your answer. And the door is answered by an elderly woman. He says, can I speak to Yosef? And she says solemnly, he hasn't lived here for 10 years. But here's his new address. And she gives him his new address. He gets back on a bus. It actually took 2 buses, but the perseverance is beautiful. After 2 bus rides, he gets off and he comes to the door, sefer in hand, and knocks on the door, and it's opened up by a man with long, long hair, tie-dyed clothing, multiple body piercings, and tattoos off the kazoo. You're Yosef? Yeah. You're Yosef who wrote the sefer? Yeah. The boy wanted to run, but Yosef said, what do you want? He said, I went through your sefer and there's something you said that I don't like. Yosef said, 1 second. He went to his room, he put on a yarmulke, and he came back. And he said to the boy, what don't you like? And the boy told him, and all of a sudden, Yosef was transformed back to that yeshiva boy of 15, 20 years prior. And he started to defend his answer. And he started to fight and argue. And Tosfos and Rashi and the Rashba and the Tzos and the Rambam and the Ravid. He happened to have told the boy what happened to him, that he went as off as he did. But he argued like his life depended on it. Torah was his life, at least for that moment. And then he emotionally turned to the boy and said, "Do you have my sefer? Because I don't." He took out the sefer and he presented it to Yosef. He goes back to yeshiva the next morning and he tells his Rebbe what happened. And the Rebbe says, "Go to a phone. You got to call that lady. That was obviously his mother. Tell his mother what happened." He runs to the phone, he dials the number, the elderly woman answers, and he says, "Hi, I want to introduce myself. I'm the boy that came yesterday and you gave..." She said, "Stop, don't talk. I don't know exactly who you are, but you listen to me, young man. I want to tell you one thing. Yosef is my son. I have not seen him for 10 years. He hasn't lived here for 10 years. Yosef called me a bit ago and said, 'Ma, I'm coming home.' And my son Yosef is about to walk He's about to walk through the front door. And I want to thank you, because whatever your interaction was with him, my Yosef is coming home." May it be the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we believe in ourselves and believe in others. When we show them the love, the validation, the acknowledgement, the recognition, we'll cause them to come home. We'll bring them home one at a time. We have to believe in ourselves. Don't let anybody tell us we can't. We're not in this world just to be yotzei. And may it be the will of Hashem that we will learn from Project Inspire. Inspire ourselves, inspire others. Believe in ourselves, believe in others. Bring them home so that there will be that ultimate message where our Father in heaven says, "My child called and said, they're ready to come home." Agutevach.